Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa lah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. How's everybody doing? Alhamdulillah. So today, inshallah ta'ala, we're taking a look at still the general broad category of legal rulings in Islam, and we've covered al-Hukm and al-Mahkoom fihi and al-Hakim, and now we are taking a look at al-Mahkoom Alayhi, the ruled upon. Al-Mahkoom Alayhi. So let's get right into it, inshallah ta'ala. So what is the definition? Al-Mahkoom Alayhi is the one who Allah's rules are upon. So who is the person that is being ruled upon? And the conditions are they must be alive. Seems pretty obvious. These rulings for this dunya, for this world. Number one, you have to be alive. Number two, you have to be capable of understanding Allah's commands. And then not only do you understand it, but in addition to that, you're capable of implementing. You can move and so forth. So who are the exemptions, who are the exemptions from these rulings? Children, because they don't fully understand. The insane, same thing. The sleeping person, they can't hear, they can't function, they can't move. The drunk person as well. And so for the above mentioned categories, it's the person's wali, it's the guardian, it's the person who is in charge of that person, who is going to use their savings to take care of their financial responsibilities. So whether the parents to the child or the family members of the insane person, etc., they're going to take care of their responsibilities. What are their responsibilities? Zakah. It could be the case that all these categories have money that does have to have zakah paid upon it. And so either that person does it, and if they can't because they are children or insane or sleeping or drunk or whatever, then of course the wali, their guardian, is going to pay their zakah on their behalf. Same thing with the financial responsibility over their family members. If they have certain family members that needs to be taken care of, then the wali will do that for them. And same thing if they owe money for property damage. Now the Prophet ﷺ tells us, this is the evidence that certain people have their responsibility lifted is the statement in which the Prophet ﷺ says, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ عَنْ ثَلَاثٍ, that the pen has been lifted from three individuals. Who are they? عَنِ النَّائِمِ حَتَّى يَسْتَيْقِظ, from the sleeper until he wakes up. وَعَنِ الصَّغِيرِ حَتَّى يَكْبُرْ, and from the minor until he grows up. And وَعَنِ الْمَجْنُونِ حَتَّى يَعْقِلْ أَوْ يَفِيقْ, and from the insane person until he comes back to his senses or recovers. So yes, when your mind is not fully there, then obviously the rules are not upon you. The pen is lifted, as in you're not being recorded for everything you do, you're not being held responsible. Now there are exceptions to the exception. This is a pretty interesting concept, that the exception is what? An exception is to this is if someone divorces their wife while drunk. Why is that the case? Because you're not supposed to get drunk, that's haram. And the things that you do while drunk, you're going to be held responsible for. That's the whole reason why you're not supposed to get drunk to begin with. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ tells us that their statement is going to be taken as legally binding based on the particular hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, ثَلَاثٌ جِدُّهُنَّ جِدٌّ وَهَزْلُهُنَّ جِدٌّ النِّكَاحُ وَالطَّلَاقُ وَالرَّجْعَةُ, that there are three things which, whether they are said seriously or in jest, they are taken seriously. So in other words, you can't, think about it in court. Think about a similar situation is when you're in court. If you say something in court and then later on tell the judge, oh, I was just joking, do you think that flies? Do you think that's going to be accepted? Of course not. Everything you say in court is going to be taken very seriously. So there are certain statements in life. You're not in court, you're just in normal life. But because of the subject matter, it's going to be taken that heavy. There's no joking about these things. So what are those subject matters? Marriage, divorce, and taking back one's wife. So when you say, I do, or I marry you, whatever, you take the wife, you can't say, oh, I was just joking, too late. It says, joking, not joking, it's serious. Then if you say talaq and divorce, same thing. It's always taken seriously. Then during the iddah period, if you say, you know what, I take her back. You can't say I was joking when I said I took her back. These are all legal statements and all taken as legally binding, whether my intent was joke, not joke, I was drunk, I was tipsy, I didn't know what I was saying, it doesn't matter. All of it is taken seriously. Next. What about the Arabic language? How responsible are you? Well, as for the responsibility of non-Arabs to understand and practice the responsibilities upon them that were conveyed to them in the Arabic language, then they can either, number one, learn Arabic, number two, learn from a translation, or number three, Arabic speakers must both learn their deen and the foreign language so they can convey it. And this would be considered a fard kifaya, a communal obligation. As Allah Ta'ala says, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. And let there be arising from you a nation inviting to all that is good, enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong, and those will be the successful. Examples of this would be, for example, I remember many years ago, Muslims were, especially in North America, we knew that we had quite a lot of content in the English language, translated many books, obviously the Quran, many hadith books, so forth, many fiqh books, but we were very worried about Hispanic. We realized that as Islam, we have a responsibility to the huge Hispanic population, both in this country as well as further south, that we had to convey the message of Islam to them. And so alhamdulillah, I do think nowadays that has changed a lot. I do think there have been many efforts to offer many translations of many very significant books, but inshallah ta'ala, obviously these things are ongoing. And so we should take that very seriously to fund these things, make sure that everybody has access to Islam in every language, inshallah ta'ala. Now this is really interesting, the 4 stages of qualification, Atwarul Ahliyya. In Islam, there are different stages of being, you could say, of aptitude or qualification, right? 4 main stages. And so let's take a look at those 4 stages, inshallah ta'ala, to see how our rights and responsibilities shift. The number 1, or the first stage, is Tawrul Ijtinan. Tawrul Ijtinan means the fetal stage, as in the moment that the baby is, the intercourse takes place and the is inception of the baby, all the way to the 9 months until the baby is born. The entire time that the baby is in the womb, that is called Tawrul Ijtinan. This is inception to birth. The fetus has rights but no responsibilities. Obviously, how can it have a responsibility? It can't do anything. What are the rights? So, if somebody dies and they left no will, but they still have inheritance, that's Haqqul Irth, rights of inheritance. But what if the person died and did leave a will? So something extra is specified or appointed to that soon to be born baby. That's Haqqul Wasiyah. That's rights of receiving a will. What about Haqqul Waqf, as in the right of a waqf or a source of income? This could be attributed to the child as well, or is attributed to the child as well. They have a right. And Haqqul Nasab, the right to lineage, as in they have the right to be named. So when the baby is born, you have to be, prior to that, you have to be thinking about the name and recognizing where this child is from and making sure you know who the father is. Obviously, this is why zina is haram. Not knowing who the father is, this is not acceptable. The legal guardian cannot give gifts, charity, nor buy on the fetus's behalf. So in other words, if theoretically this fetus does have, you could say, a bank account, because certain amounts of money goes in, let's say due to somebody dying, inheritance, whatever the case is. So money can go into that fetus's account and is waiting for them, obviously, till they grow up and actually can spend that money. You can't take, the guardian can't say, you know what, I'll take chunks of money out of that and give people gifts. You can't do that. Money can go in, but you're not supposed to be taking money out. Even if a fetus inherited a lot of money, and this fetus has dependents. You might think, how can a fetus have dependents? Well, like its grandparents need money. That could be the case, right? So this is just a fetus, but there are grandparents that are poor. There's no obligation that the guardian gives the money to the dependents, not until the baby is born, which we'll see in a moment. Now, what about Zakatul Fitr? Every year you hear people saying, you have to give the Zakatul Fitr even if you just have a baby in the womb. Well, Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, but from what I checked, there are fatawa that explain that the Zakatul Fitr is recommended, mustahab for the fetus, but that changes once the baby is born. Let's take a look at stage 2. So stage 1 is what? From inception to birth, as in basically the whole time that you were in the womb, or anybody is in the womb. That's stage 1. Let's see stage 2 of these Atwarul Ahliyya. What is stage 2? It is Tawrul Siba, or also you could also say Tawrul Tufula, which is infancy stage. And that is from birth to 7 years old. So first it was inside the womb, then those 9 months. Then you're born all the way to 7 years old. The child has rights, like all the above mentioned, everything that was mentioned earlier, all those rights, and they do actually also have new responsibilities, which are done by the guardian, obviously because the child is too young to do them, but they are new responsibilities that have to be done by the guardian, inshallah. For example, zakah. So this baby has a whole bunch of money in his account, her account. Every year goes by, zakat is owed. Yes, the guardian has to take that 2.5% or 1/40th of the standing wealth, and therefore give that in zakah. Zakatul Fitr now becomes an obligation as well, and spending on the dependents as well now kicks into gear, you could say. Wallahu alam bis-sawab. Any contracts or purchases are considered void because they're too young to be accountable. In other words, you can't say, oh, I'm going to do this business transaction on behalf of this, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old's wealth. We're going to do a contract, void. It's their money, and you do not have the right to do that. You have to just do the bare minimum, which is zakah, zakat al-fitr, and spending on the dependents, so forth. Yes. Let's keep going. Stage 3 is what? Tawr tamyiz. So now, between 7 and puberty, the child starts to, that's by the way, not just in Islamic fiqh, but throughout the world. If you take a look at all different civilizations, you'll find that 7 years old is this age of tamyiz, in the sense that the child is now able to speak. Typically, when you're 7 years old, you can speak, you have mastery and command over the language, so you can actually interact at, you could say, an adult level. That doesn't mean you're necessarily mature. Some people are mature even at that age, because keep in mind, not everybody lives like us. For thousands and thousands of years, people lived in much more difficult lives and had to mature a lot faster. They had responsibility over farming, over animals, over their siblings, etc. So people matured a lot faster. Once they could reach 7, now they have that tawr tamyiz. They have this stage of distinction. So anyway, 7 years old till puberty. They have all the rights and responsibilities mentioned in the previous category, yet they can do the requirements for adults. In other words, like, you can pray your salah. You're supposed to encourage your 7-year-old to pray his 5 daily salawat and fast. Obviously, they don't fast necessarily the full day, but you're trying to get them acclimated. You're trying to get them used to that. But they aren't required to do these things, right? So the things like, for example, like I said, fasting in Ramadan, praying your salawat, things like this, you should encourage this. Jazakallah khair, shukran, barakallahu feekum. They can also, interestingly enough, they can also accept gifts without the guardian's permission. So if you're from anywhere from 7 all the way to puberty, and someone says, hey, why don't you take this gift? I just want to give something to you. You don't need your guardian's permission. They are old enough to accept and understand what's happening. They can accept payment for work. Hey, you did a little job around here. Here you go, no problem. It's valid. They can represent an adult when appointed in their absence to do something that is simple and beneficial. And what's done is considered valid. So here is a very simple example. I can appoint my 10-year-old to collect money from the guy that owes me money, and that guy can give the money to my 10-year-old without feeling that he did something irresponsible. The kid was old enough to handle the responsibility, therefore the money was paid back in a valid way. I hope that's clear. So I send my 10-year-old, make sure you go collect money from so-and-so, he owes me money. The guy's thinking, should I give this money to the 10-year-old? Is this even responsible to do? Maybe I'm not allowed to do so, and the answer is yes. Why? Because they are in the tawr tamyiz. They are in the stage of distinction, so they can handle such a responsibility, inshallah ta'ala. However, they're not old enough to be appointed to do something that can lead to harm. So examples of this is they cannot be entrusted to convey a divorce that's too heavy for someone just between 7 and puberty, or free a slave, or give a significant gift, or give sadaqah, or give a waqf, or give a deposit. These would be considered invalid from a child except in the presence of their guardian, obviously, because then the guardian is, you could say, co-signing or accepting everything that they're doing. Regarding issues that can oscillate between good and bad, like an investment that may result in profits or losses, purchases, selling, renting, marriage, etc., then the child must get permission from his guardian. So you can see, as they're getting older, they're gaining more responsibility, but not too much, because obviously otherwise you would cause problems. Next is finally the 4th stage of maturity, which is what? Tawrul bulughi aqilan, the stage of maturity, but specifically the stage of sane maturity. Why? Because people can go through puberty and be fully mature, but they could be insane. So when the person is both mature, gone through puberty, and fully sane, this is the last stage, and it's from puberty till death. Now, of course, the question is, how do you know that the person gone through puberty? Well, this is known either by bodily evidence. There's pubic hair, there is menstruation, there's ejaculation, as in the children are able to make babies. Or, if none of those things are apparent, then just the fact that they reach the age of 15 according to the Jumhur. So if for whatever reason the person has, low testosterone or whatever the case is, that certain signs are not showing, doesn't matter. You're 15 years old, khalas, you're considered an adult. The person is responsible, and that's the case from 15 all the way till what? Till death. The person is responsible for all religious obligations, all oaths, and they are accountable in court for their crimes. That's something very significant, because sometimes this issue comes up in the United States or in other countries where a child or somebody who's relatively young does some sort of a criminal act. And then it's like, are they tried as an adult? Are they not tried as an adult? And are there exceptions to this? And these things become big debated issues. Sometimes even race becomes a factor. It's like, because they were of this race, they were treated like adults. When they were that race, they were not treated as adults. So these things become very contentious. But the Islamic perspective here is described so that inshallah ta'ala, everything's clear. Now, what are some obstacles for aptitude, or obstacles for being qualified? What are there? Well, there are obstacles that can remove a ruling from you, or diminish them, or change the nature of that ruling. And these obstacles fall into two types. The first type is al-awarid as-samawiyya. Arid is a preventer. Awarid is the plural, preventers. Samawiyya means heavenly, or from the sky. In other words, God-given. God-given preventers. What are they? Being young, like we said earlier, you're young. It's just, that's the way God made you. First you start as a baby, right? You're young, or insane, or mentally handicapped, or forgetting, or sleeping, or slavery, or illness, or loss of consciousness, passing out, or menses, or postnatal bleeding, or death. These are all things that can remove somebody's responsibility that just happened because you're a human being, and Allah Ta'ala just decreed that these things would happen to you. They fall into different categories. For example, one category is they remove all responsibility, like madness, sleeping, or passing out. These things remove all responsibility from a person because they can't do anything. The guardian of the crazy person handles their financial responsibilities. The sleeping person handles his own obligations, but obviously when they wake up. So these are some categories. Now, in terms of the other person, there's mental handicaps, or the other category, I should say, is mental handicaps. They can vary greatly from being capable of handling their own responsibilities to having no autonomy whatsoever. So it's obviously case dependent, because mental handicaps can vary greatly, and therefore fuqaha have to go into more detail there. Now, those are so like we said, there's two obstacles of aptitude. Number one is God-given, al-awarid as-samawiyya. What's the second one? Al-awarid al-muktasabah. These are acquired preventers, acquired. It's not something that just happens because Allah Ta'ala decreed it. These are something that's acquired by the individual. What are they? Ignorance, drunkenness, belittlement, ghafla. It's not a big deal, who cares? What's it called? Al-amani. Wishful thinking. Foolishness, like being completely indebted, spending very extravagantly, and now you're in a lot of debt. Or being forced, that can come from a human being. It's not something that is a God-given thing, it's human beings that force a person. So this falls into different categories. Being somebody who is stupid or in debt, others can actually remove your rights to spend if you are high risk. So this can happen. If a person is a gambling addict, then it could be that family members take control over their credit card, or whatever the case is, right? These things can happen. Or someone's just too foolish to be responsible for their own money. It could be that the courts rule that, you're no longer going to be responsible for these things. When someone is forced by a major threat, like if somebody threatens loss of life or limb, like it's not a small threat, like I'm going to punch you in the shoulder or something. No, I'm going to either kill you or like chop you up, or whatever the case is, something awful. Then there's no longer, that person is no longer liable, so long as they're unhappy to do the impermissible act. It could be the case that a person puts a gun to you and says, bow down to an idol, and you're like, no, I'm happy to not bow down to that idol. I'm happy to resist. And the guy's like, but I'm going to shoot you. He's like, yep, and I'm happy with that too. And that, inshallah, gets shahada. You're allowed to do that. But if you're unhappy with doing it, then you are allowed to say, okay, I'll bow down to the idol, and therefore I'm not considered a mushrik, obviously, because Allah knows it was under force. What's interesting, though, is that these have a few categories. The Hanafis say that the one who the Hanafis say that the one who forces a transaction, or a marriage, or a divorce, or an oath, or emancipation is sinful, but the transaction is still valid. But this is a weak opinion. It seems that the rest of the Jumhur, and Allah knows best, it seems that other opinions say that no, if you force a transaction, it's not considered a valid one, just a sinful one. No, it's just completely invalid. So this is something that fuqaha debate about. Is it valid and sinful, or is it invalid? However, this is really interesting. Hanafis say that there are three types of major threats. I found this really quite fascinating. Again, a major threat is either life or limb, not something small, life or limb. So what are they? The first category is a major threat to eat or drink. You're stuck on an island, and there's nothing to drink except for alcohol, or there's nothing to eat except pork. But you need to do this to save your life, for example. You should do it to save your life. In other words, you shouldn't say, I'm stuck on this island and I'd rather die than drink something that's alcohol or eat something that's pork. I'd rather die. No, that's actually a bad choice. So the higher recommendation, the better recommendation is save your life and eat the thing that is haram. Well, it's not haram in that case because it's to save your life, obviously. Now the second position is what? A major threat to disbelieve, or a major threat to break your fast. Somebody puts a gun to you and says, bow down to an idol, or break your fast, or miss your prayers, or destroy somebody's property, burn down this guy's house, or whatever the case is. You can do it to save your life. You can do these things. Any of these things, you can do them to save your life. or you can defy them in honor of Islam, and you're going to be rewarded for being a martyr. So there's a higher reward for saying, no, I refuse to miss my prayers, I refuse to break my fast, I refuse to destroy the property of the believers, or whatever the case is. I'm going to shoot you though. Okay, go ahead. And then I'm going to die fi sabilillah. That's actually, you get reward for that. It's a higher one. But of course you can obviously say no, and you can obviously acquiesce to the threat, to the person threatening you, no problem. And the third one is interesting, which is a major threat. Somebody is giving you a major threat to kill somebody else. I put a gun to Brother Ammar, and I said, Brother Ammar, I want you to shoot Brother Hamza. In that particular case, you say, look, I was under duress. He forced me to because he had a gun to me, he was going to kill me. Well, guess what? You must refuse. I know this might sound strange because you thought, hey, when somebody puts a gun to me, I thought I could say, okay, I thought I could just acquiesce to save my life. Not in this particular case. You must refuse to kill that other person. If you do commit murder to save your life, you deserve a death according to the Jumhur, according to the majority opinion. You deserve the death penalty, and you deserve some kind of ta'zir or punishment designated by the judge according to the Hanafis. But either way, you cannot, and this is unfortunately something that we see with some Muslim governments that are tyrannical. They will tell their soldiers, if you do not kill these innocent people, then we will kill you. Well, technically, they're supposed to be able to say, I'm not going to kill an innocent person. And they say, yeah, but we'll kill you then. Well, okay, that's unfortunate for me. But me being killed is more acceptable than me taking a life. That's supposed to be the idea. And obviously, if you want to do just simple math, what if I put a gun to Brother Ammar and I say you have to kill 2 people? You get my point? What if I say kill 3 people? You get my point? And so I'm protecting myself because I'm not doing the murdering myself, but I'm getting somebody else to, just by persistently threatening that one person. So you guys can see how things can get out of hand really quickly. Or, I put a gun to him and say, either you die or you designate 2 people to kill. You have to designate 2 people to kill 2 more people, and those have to do 2 more people. You get my point? It goes more and more and more. So no, you have to stop this madness. And then obviously just take the hit, and may Allah Ta'ala protect us so that we're never in this situation. So I hope that clarifies these things, and inshallah Ta'ala with that we will close. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah Ta'ala make us of those who understand when we have rulings upon us, and so that we fulfill our obligations. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakallahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.